drug bust, part of a nearly decades-long investigation with the FBI, right? And the director of the FBI says this is the largest takedown he's ever seen, and everyone should be paying attention.
It began like any ordinary traffic stop. On a quiet stretch of Interstate 10 outside El Paso, a Texas state trooper noticed a black hearse drift lanes without signaling. Nothing dramatic, no high-speed chase, just a minor violation. The trooper activated his lights. The driver pulled over calmly. He wore a dark suit, his paperwork was in perfect order. He explained he was transporting the body of an elderly woman from El Paso to Houston for burial. Everything appeared professional, respectful, routine. But something felt wrong. The driver's hands trembled slightly as he handed over the documents. Sweat formed on his forehead despite the mild weather. When asked simple questions about the deceased, he hesitated. He couldn't recall the funeral home contact name. His answers were vague. The trooper requested consent to inspect the vehicle. The driver refused. A canine unit was called to the scene. Minutes later, the dog alerted to the rear of the hearse, specifically near the casket compartment. Now the situation became delicate. Opening a casket on the side of a highway is not routine law enforcement. It involves dignity, legal authority, and extreme caution. Supervisors were contacted. The DEA was notified. A medical examiner was brought in. 2 hours later, under proper documentation and witness presence, the casket was opened. Inside lay the properly embalmed body of an elderly woman. But beneath the inner lining, hidden in a sealed compartment, agents found 38 pounds of fentanyl and 22 pounds of methamphetamine. Street value, nearly $3 million. That moment marked the beginning of one of the most disturbing federal investigations in modern American history. What appeared to be a funeral transport was actually a mobile drug shipment, and this was only the first one.
Services. 33 people have been indicted on drug trafficking charges.
I think you've seen the news this morning. The news is reporting that cartel drones are being shot down by our military.
As the arrested driver faced decades in prison, he made a decision: cooperate. What he revealed stunned federal investigators. For nearly 3 years, a criminal network connected to the Gulf Cartel had turned funeral homes into drug trafficking hubs. They weren't smuggling drugs in trucks, tunnels, or boats. They were hiding them with the dead. The scheme was horrifying in its simplicity. Cartel operatives targeted funeral homes in border cities: El Paso, Laredo, McAllen, Brownsville, and parts of Arizona. Some owners were bribed. Others were threatened. In certain cases, cartel associates obtained legitimate funeral licenses and quietly infiltrated businesses from the inside. Custom-built caskets were manufactured with hidden compartments beneath the lining. These compartments were sealed, odor-resistant, and professionally constructed to avoid suspicion. When a family needed to transport a loved one across state lines, the corrupted funeral home swapped the original casket with a modified one containing drugs. The body was placed inside as normal. The grieving family never knew. Law enforcement rarely stops hearses. There is cultural respect for death. Officers hesitate to interfere with funeral processions. The cartel understood that. They weaponized dignity. Over 3 years, investigators later discovered approximately 340 suspected casket shipments. Drugs moved quietly along American highways in broad daylight under memorial flowers and sympathy cards. The estimated value? $890 million. Funerals became camouflage. Grief became protection. And America's highways became silent corridors of narcotics trafficking.
So more than 90,000 pounds of a substance or a drug said to contain deadly amounts of opioid was seized.
Once federal agencies began digging deeper, the operation's scale became clear. Surveillance teams monitored 23 funeral homes across 14 states. Patterns emerged quickly. Hearses making unusually short interstate trips. Transport permits tied to individuals who didn't exist. Financial records showing unexplained cash deposits, $50,000 per shipment. Forensic accountants traced millions in suspicious transactions. But it didn't stop there. Investigators uncovered bribery inside regulatory agencies. State inspectors were paid to ignore violations. Licensing approvals were rushed. Oversight gaps were exploited. In some cases, when no legitimate funeral transport was available, the network created fake deaths. Fraudulent certificates were filed. Cremation urns filled with narcotics were shipped under fabricated identities. The system was being manipulated at multiple levels. When the DEA coordinated with state medical examiner offices, they confirmed over 340 questionable casket transports during a 3-year window. The numbers were staggering. Over 13,000 pounds of fentanyl, nearly 9,000 pounds of methamphetamine, thousands of pounds of cocaine. Each shipment carried potentially lethal doses capable of affecting millions. Federal authorities named the case Operation Final Passage. It was no longer a regional investigation. It was a nationwide emergency.
Funeral home director is charged with selling illegal drugs out of her place of business.
This is exactly how you safeguard American lives. You go after the organizations that are inflicting pain across America.
At dawn in April, federal agents executed coordinated raids across multiple states. Search warrants were served simultaneously at 23 funeral homes. DEA agents entered offices, storage rooms, and preparation facilities. Forensic teams collected computers, financial ledgers, and modified caskets with hidden compartments still intact. In one location, 14 custom-built smuggling caskets were found waiting for use. By the end of the day, 67 individuals were in federal custody. Funeral directors, embalmers, drivers, coordinators, corrupt officials. Charges included drug trafficking conspiracy, money laundering, and abuse of human remains in furtherance of criminal activity. Families who had used these funeral homes for legitimate services were devastated when notified. Many learned that their loved ones' caskets had unknowingly transported narcotics across state lines. Lawsuits followed. Trust was shattered. The funeral homes were permanently shut down. Licenses revoked. Regulatory boards began emergency reviews of interstate funeral transport policies. But many cartel leaders remained outside U.S. jurisdiction, operating from across the border. International warrants were issued. The message was clear. No cover, not even death, would shield criminal enterprise from federal pursuit.
Funeral home director is charged with selling illegal drugs out of her place of business.
This is exactly how you safeguard American lives. You go after the organizations that are inflicting pain across America.
Operation Final Passage forced a difficult national question. How do you protect the dignity of the dead while preventing criminals from exploiting that dignity? Funerals represent society's final act of respect, a moment of remembrance, closure, sacred tradition. This operation corrupted that sacred space. Federal lawmakers introduced new proposals requiring tighter oversight for funeral homes involved in interstate transport. Training protocols for law enforcement were updated to recognize suspicious indicators without compromising respect. But beyond policy changes lies a deeper reality. The cartel relied on human decency. They counted on officers hesitating, on families trusting, on society believing that some lines would never be crossed. They were wrong. The 67 arrests disrupted a massive trafficking network, but investigators admit vulnerabilities remain. Wherever systems rely on trust, there will be those who attempt to abuse it. Yet this case also demonstrated something powerful. A single observant trooper, a canine alert, a decision to question what didn't feel right. That was enough to unravel an $890 million criminal pipeline. In the end, Operation Final Passage became more than a drug case. It became a reminder. Respect for the dead must never become a shield for the living to spread destruction, and justice, no matter how hidden, eventually finds its way to the surface.